Well, welcome to TV3 Extra. Today I have Jeff Stum with us. Jeff, you are with the Great Race, which is coming to Detroit Lakes June 25th, 2022. What is the Great Race?
Raina, the Great Race is an old car race across the country each year, and it's been going on for 40 years. And these are cars that date back as far as 1916. And it is the most unique event in all of motorsports. And every year is a different route. We have 120 teams, and these teams are from all over the world. We have teams from Australia, Japan, Germany, England, Canada, and all over the United States. And these are some of the most unique cars. It's like we broke into the car museums and stole all the cars. We're out driving them on the highways and back roads, and we're bringing them to your town. We're coming to Detroit Lakes on Saturday, June 25th, and you can't get a better deal than that on a nice weekend in Minnesota. Nothing gets better than that.
Yes. So now is it like on a racetrack or what is this?
No, that's a good question. It is a race in that there are winners and losers, and there's prize money. There's $160,000 in total prize money, with $50,000 going to the winning team. But the winning team is not the team that drives the fastest. It's the ones who do it the most accurately. It's a time, speed, distance rally. So if we tell you to go 40 miles an hour at a certain sign, you have to hold 40. And 40 subjective. The 40 mile an hour in your car might be a little bit different than in my car, but we measure the route and we apply the speed to that measurement. So we know exactly what it should be. And so they're trying to match exactly what we tell them to. And then the real challenge is making turns or stopping at a stop sign. We might allow you 15 seconds to stop at a stop sign, but you have to calculate your downtime from 40 miles an hour to zero. And then you have to calculate your uptime from zero back to whatever the new speed is. So there's a lot of calculations, and it's actually quite a fun game. And it would be difficult to do in a modern car with windows rolled up and air conditioning on. When you get in a car like this one back here in this painting behind me, that's over 100 years old, and there's no doors and there's no windows, and you're driving 40 miles an hour down the road trying to follow these instructions, it's quite challenging.
So is when you say you're coming to Detroit Lakes, is there a you start and stop and go so many miles and then you move on to the next community, like in
Yes.
trucks, or how does that work?
Well, it's a 9-day, 2,300 mile race, and it will start this year in Rhode Island, and it will finish the following day after we're in Detroit Lakes in Fargo. And each day is an average of about 250 miles, which in an old car is quite a challenge. We will do what you could do in your modern car in 3 or 4 hours. It will take us all day, 10 hours to do. So each day is its own individual race. So the first day out of Warwick, Rhode Island to Windsor Locks, Connecticut is its own individual race. There'll be a winner for that day. And then there's different classifications. There's some, kind of inside baseball to how some of that works. You could actually finish 37th place, but you could be the winner of your division. Say if you were a first timer, we have a rookie division, and you would be the winner of your division for that day. So there's actually multiple winners each day. And as we continue across the country, it kind of builds like any other racing series, like in NASCAR. We're just instead of a race being every Sunday, we're cramming 9 days or 9 race days into 9 consecutive days, moving across the country. And then, we'll have wherever we stop for that day, we're done for that day. We have, we'll stay at the hotels, and then we'll move on the next day. So and we have a big promotion. Every evening we have a promotion. There's 500 people in our entourage, like I was telling you, from all over the world. And these cars will come in, and they come in 1 minute apart. Each car does the same route, the same course, but they're 1 minute apart. So if you and I are in the first car and two other people are in the last car, everything we do is 2 hours before they do it. So we'll get to the finish 2 hours before they do. We get to lunch 2 hours before they do, and so on. So it really makes for an exciting finish to the day, because every minute these cool cars come in. You'll see a 1916 Hudson that won the 2019 Great Race. And you'll think, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then here comes the next car, is a 1918 American LaFrance fire engine that's chain driven, and the chain's that thick and it's really long. And it just things that you never see on the highway or in your town, but they will be coming to town. And it's really Americana at its best, and it's free to the public. And because it has the word race in it, it really interests people. They'll come in and the drivers will take off their goggles, it's clean around their eyes and their faces are all dirty. And it just really intrigues people. And there will actually be more non-car people at the event that day than there are, car guys.
So what can people expect on the 25th? How do you watch something like this if they're coming from somewhere else and there's not like a central track?
Well, we'll start that particular day, Saturday, June 25th, in Duluth, right downtown Duluth. We will, which is where we will finish the day before on that Friday at Bayfront Festival Park, right there on the harbor looking out to Lake Superior. And we will do back roads all the way to Brainerd for lunch. We're having a lunch stop at the International Raceway in Brainerd as one of the events of what is called Lake Jams. It's a big music festival that takes over the raceway for 3 or 4 days. But they also have a lot of events, some really crazy events like lawnmower racing. And the one I'm really anxious to see is the snowmobile racing across the lake. So if your snowmobile doesn't have enough speed, it sinks to the bottom of the lake. And you probably have seen this kind of thing. I haven't seen it, so I'm pretty excited to see that one in particular. But the third event on this particular day, that's the attraction, or one of the attractions at Lake Jams, is the Great Race coming in for lunch. And then as the teams leave, so each team gets an hour for lunch. So if we're in the first car, we get to Brainerd about noon. We have lunch at 1 o'clock. We start continuing on our way to Detroit Lakes. So starting that afternoon, I think it's about 4:30. The first car, the show will start about 4 o'clock. And we have an giant inflatable at the top that says, "Welcome to Detroit Lakes, Minnesota." We'll do like any pre-race show you've ever seen. We'll have a national anthem. We'll have some dignitaries come out, things like that. And at about 10 minutes after 4, the first car will come. We have an announcer. He'll tell everybody what what that car is, who the driver navigator are, where they're from. And as he's about done talking about that first car, here comes the second car. And this will continue on every minute for 2 hours. And it's just a big buildup. It's a big festival. It's a lot of excitement. The finish line is People's Park, right down behind Zorba's. I'm sure everybody knows Zorba's. Even here in Tennessee, I know where Zorba's is. And it's just going to be a big festival atmosphere. I would tell people to come early. There's a lot of car clubs coming from great distances away to see this that day in Detroit Lakes. So we do drive a lot of car people in from outside areas. I know the following day there's car clubs coming from Bismarck, North Dakota to Fargo and things like that. So you'll see the same thing in Detroit Lakes. And the majority of the people would just be people that are coming to see the unique event. There'll be 30-somethings pushing baby carriages because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to see some of the most unique cars that you've ever seen, and everything you can imagine. And we have the teams are varied as well. We have Japanese teams, and we have German team, and we have husband and wife teams. We have father-son teams, grandfather-grandson teams. We have one mother-daughter team. They're from Seattle, Washington. And we have one sisters team, two sisters, ages 20 and 18. And they were actually the winners of the entire race last year and won $50,000. They won the race in a 1932 Ford Coupe. So it just shows that this is not an old man's event, although we got a lot of old guys in the event. That I guess they'll be 21 and 19 this year, but they are the defending champions, of our event.
So everything is coming to People's Park. That's where people should go to watch them coming in.
Yes. Excuse me. We'll be coming in from the east and turning and actually coming a little odd way, coming south on Washington towards the lake. Washington kind of makes that turn. We're along the lake shore. North on, it runs up by the park, and then coming back into the park from the north again. So it's, if you want to, you could obviously see the event on Washington, but the really good place to be is going to be in the park.
Okay. And is there anything on your website or anything where people can see a map or anything, or?
There's a generic cartoony kind of map that shows the route as a general, from Rhode Island to Fargo with the cities. There's not a map of the event because, number one, it is a competition. Wouldn't want somebody to get an advantage knowing the area, knowing the roads, or for anybody to do anything like block the road after their buddies went through. So the route is not published when we're on what we call the race course. By the time they get to town and get to Washington, it's a free zone coming in. It's back roads. I know a lot of times we'll go to the hometown of a racer, and they'll say, "I've lived here my whole life, and I've never been on some of these roads that were coming into their hometown."
Sure. And so are there going to be any bleachers or anything for people to sit? What should they expect?
No, bring your lawn chairs, folding chairs, or be ready to just walk around. It's a walking event. People stand around and basically make a line as the cars come through. There'll be people 10 deep on both sides as they come through to come to the finish line. And then they park and people crowd around when they get out of the car, especially if it's a car of interest. Like we hear this a lot. My grandfather used to have one like this, or we hear this a lot. What is this? Because people have never seen or heard of some of the cars like a Hudson or a Packard or Stutz, Marmon, some really great automobile manufacturers from the teens and 20s and 30s. They're no longer in business, so people aren't familiar with them.
So that they will park, and then you can go ahead and look at the car and perhaps talk to the drivers, or
absolutely. The kids get to climb in the cars, that kind of thing. It's a real hands-on, touchy-feely kind of event. You get to do the little ooga horns where they, and it's just like I say, it's the most unique event in all of motorsports because you'll never see anything like it again.
Sure. So that is June 25th, 2020 here in Detroit Lakes at People's Park. And then you said vehicles should start coming in around 4.
Yes.
But get there early.
Yes. It will last till 7:30, and at 7:30 the cars will then be released to go to their hotels. Well, the hotels are in Fargo, but then on Sunday, they'll have to go out and do about 150 miles of a course we've laid out in North Dakota to come back to Fargo to the actual finish line. So just because we're in Fargo doesn't mean they've made it. They still got a 150-mile test on that Sunday. And then the finish will be a Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. on Broadway in front of the Fargo Theater in Fargo. So you really have people in this area have a unique opportunity that a lot of places don't, that you could actually see it twice in 2 days because it's only an hour between the two. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 hours between the last two stops on the event. So it's a very.
How many vehicles or cars did you say are participating?
Well, we'll start with 130 in Rhode Island. We anticipate we'll be at about 120 when we reach Minnesota. Sure. It is it's unfortunately cars break down. Now that is part of the game. It actually doesn't matter how good you are at the calculations if your car's on the side of the road. So it's very much a test of endurance and accuracy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. How many typically break down, and then what do they do?
Depending on how bad it is, they generally go home. I mean, there's nothing much else to do. And the way the event's set up, if you miss even a half a day of the competition of that day, even if you fix the car and continue on, you're going to be in last place or down, near the bottom, no matter what you do.
Sure.
So it's like being 20 laps down at the Indy 500 and there's only 20 laps to go. What's the point?
Yeah. So where did this start? How did this come to be?
It's very interesting. It started in 1983 by a man named Tom McRae, and he just had this wild idea that he was going to get all these guys to get their cars out of the museums and out of the garages and run them up and down the back roads of America. And he started really on a hope and a prayer, not really knowing, had never done anything like it before. And within 6 months, had actually gotten over 60 cars to show up at Knott's Berry Farm in California. And they 7 days later, they finished in Indianapolis at the Speedway right before the Indianapolis 500. And it just kind of grew from there. And it is, that was 40 years ago. And it's been, it's one of the great brands in the hobby. It's kind of like saying Coca-Cola or Home Depot out in the regular world. The Great Race has that kind of history. And some of your viewers may know the movie called The Great Race, which is a 1965 film by Blake Edwards that starred Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, Natalie Wood, and Peter Falk. And it's one of the great movies of its era. So it's a comedy. It's very long, but it was about a real event that happened in 1908. And it was a race from New York to Paris that actually happened and was won by an American car, an automobile called the Thomas Flyer. And so our event is about a movie based on a real event. So it's kind of fun. And Tony Curtis was actually our grand marshal twice before he passed away a few years ago. Got to meet him and become friends, and he was a real prince of a guy.
Well, that is really cool. Yeah. So how much is involved in this? How do you, is there judging? Like when you say, the timing, how does all of that work?
Yes, there's secret checkpoints. We measure the route. It's 2,300 miles, each day, roughly 250 miles, but so it's 2,300 miles across the country. We measure it out, to the 10th of an inch so that we know where they should be at any given time, where every car should be, if they're doing it correctly. So we can set up checkpoints anywhere we want. So we'll set up 4, 5, 6 checkpoints a day. They don't know where they are. So they have to stay on what we call on course and on time all day long. And some people say, oh, we'll just drive real fast. And no, you don't know where they are. So when you come around that corner, they're going to see you, and you're going to be, 20 minutes too soon. And you might as well pack up and go home at that point. So most everybody does. It's not hard. It's actually quite fun. And most everybody picks it up pretty easily and tries very well to do it. And the winning team each day might only have an error time of 6 or 7 seconds off of what we call a perfect score. And a perfect score would be if they cross every single checkpoint. Let's say there's 5 checkpoints. If they hit every single checkpoint at exactly the right time to the second, then they would get a 0. If they were 3 seconds early at the first checkpoint, they get a 3. If they're 5 seconds late at the second checkpoint, you get a 5, and so on. And your score adds up, and it's totaled. And then the lowest score, like in golf, wins.
Interesting. Yeah, that's great. So we're talking about the great race that is coming to Detroit Lakes on June 25th, 2020. Again, around 4:00 when the vehicles will start coming in. Jeff, how did you get involved in this?
I saw the great race for the first time in 1987 on television. It was an ESPN 1-hour special on the event that had just happened. And I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I was into cars. I was young. I was working my first job. And they said, you need to take a week's vacation. You've been here, a year and a half. You're going to lose it if you don't take it. And the event was going to finish in Florida. And so I took off and went down there, and I saw the finish. And then I was really like, this really is cool. And in 1992, the event actually came to my hometown. And that was quite a kick. And I entered for the first time as a competitor in 1994, and just have been involved ever since. And in 2010, Coker Tire, the world's largest supplier of vintage tires for all these old cars, actually bought the event from the founder, and they asked me to run the event. So this is I've been doing this now 12 years on this side. So I guess I'm fast approaching being on the side of this, being the director putting on the event, as many years as I actually was a competitor.
And then do you know what some of the other models of cars people will see? You listed a few.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, the event's dominated by Fords. I mean, there's probably 30% of all the vehicles are Fords, from a 1928 Model A, which is the Model A. There've been more Model A's in this event than any other car through the years. 1932 through 39 Fords are the most popular cars right now, because they have V8s. So they have a lot of power to do the event. They have good brakes. They're a little more modern. And you get a handicap for every year older your car is. From 1974, you get a little bit of a handicap. So if you're going to win the race, you want to be in what we call pre-war car, which is pre-World War II. And in all the years we've done the race, only one time has a non-pre-war car won the event. So it's really, if you want to win and be competitive, that's what you want to do. We have a Peerless automobile. We'll have we're starting to get a lot of European cars and sports cars, MGs, BMWs that are sports cars, not like what you see on the road today. A 1938 BMW is something that most people have never seen.
And what's the cutoff? What year is the cutoff?
1974. So
Okay.
you could do it in a vehicle as new as 1974. But if you and I are in a 1928 Model A Ford, and we go out and we do the day, and we're only 20 seconds off of a perfect time, and our friends are in a 1972 GTO, and they do it 15 seconds off of perfect time. Well, 15 is lower than 20, so they win, right? Except for then the handicap is applied. Our 20 now becomes a 12. Their 15 stays at 15. We win, and that's based on it levels the playing field, because it's much more difficult to do it in a 1928 Ford than it would be to do it in a 1972 GTO,
Yeah.
and that leveling the playing field is what makes it interesting, and it keeps the old cars in the race. This is a 19 going one of the trees out in California, and it was the winner of the 2019 great race from Riverside, California to Tacoma, Washington. And this is on our posters, and you'll probably see these around town. That's a 1928 Ford Model A. So a lot of variety. You'll see a lot of 50s and 60s cars that people can identify with. They might remember their grandfather having a 55 Oldsmobile. There's a 56 Studebaker that's in the race, and we're actually stopping a couple of days before we get to Detroit Lakes at the Studebaker National Museum in South Bend, Indiana, which is where the cars were made up until about 1964. So there's a lot of most people at this event will have never heard of or seen a Studebaker.
Well, super. Thank you so much. I'm talking with Jeff Stum from the Great Race. Again, it's coming to Detroit Lakes Saturday, June 25th, 2022, at People's Park in Detroit Lakes, kind of behind Zorba's, kind of by the skate park in Detroit Lakes. And 4:00-ish is when the cars should be coming in, but try and get there early and get a spot to sit, bring your chair, and come and look at some old cars. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks for having the route go through Detroit Lakes.
Raina, thank you. We're so excited to be there. One of the teams is from the drivers from Ottertail County, which is, I guess, your next county over.
Yes.
He's, I guess, originally from Fergus Falls, but lives on a lake in Ottertail County. And the closest town is Detroit Lakes, so he frequents there quite often. And his navigator is from Fargo. They're cousins, and they have the 1918 American LaFrance that's chain driven. That is absolutely the big crowd favorite when it comes in. It is loud and it spits fire, and it is quite a machine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.